Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome to another noontime stream. My name is David Ellis. I'm a game designer living in the Pacific Northwest here in the United States. It's noon my time. Thought it would be fun to kind of hang out. Hey, what's up, Xmoda? Welcome. Thought it'd be fun to hang out. Master Chief Collection just got updated for Xbox Series S and X, and Halo 4 was brought to the PC on the Master Chief Collection. So a lot of people talking about Halo 4. Hey, I worked on Halo 4. It's been 8 years ago, which is almost unbelievable. So I thought we'd play a little bit of some Halo 4, maybe share some stories of what I can remember. It's been a long time. And just give you a little background. I've been with 343 since 2010. I've been working primarily as a game designer since 2012. Working on Halo 4. I was one of the designers on Spartan Ops, which was our episodic co-op campaign that we released for free alongside the rest of Halo 4. So I'll be kind of talking about my experiences working on that, sharing some remembrances and insights, hopefully, about what that experience was like, because it was crazy. Because that was the first game that I shipped as a designer, and it was also the first major project developed primarily by 343. Our publishing team had worked with outside partners on Halo Anniversary previously, but this was a big one. A lot of pressure on the studio. It was interesting times. So yeah, I'll be trying to pay attention to chat and hop in here. But one thing I wanted to talk about is it's actually really cool playing MCC. Is that you have I like the fact that you Spartan Ops is actually set underneath the campaigns, which I think is pretty cool, because that's definitely what they were kind of designed under. So when you go into MCC, go to campaigns, and it's right here under Halo 4, which is pretty cool. One of the things we found with Spartan Ops after we shipped it on Halo 4 is a lot of people didn't know where to find it, didn't even know what it was, because we sort of rebranded multiplayer as War Games, and it was under that umbrella, and I think a lot of people had trouble even finding it. So it's cool to see that the MCC team has kind of learned from that, and it's listed under campaigns. I think I'm just going to play some of the levels that I worked on. First one we're going to pop into is in Episode 3, Catherine, which is named after Catherine Halsey. We actually introduce her as a character that you interact with. And the first two missions that I kind of worked on are Spartan Mountain and Shootout in Valhalla, Episode 3, Missions 3 and 4. The really interesting thing about those is that it takes place on the Halo 4 version of Valhalla, which was called Ragnarok, and just interesting story behind that. But I sort of got the opportunity to work on this level, and we knew we were going to have multiple missions on the same levels, and that was kind of an interesting challenge, because this was, I think, the first multiplayer level we were going to have Spartan Ops missions on. So I'm going to transition into a top-down view of, so this is Halo 4's Ragnarok, our version of Valhalla. It's virtually identical from a layout setup. There's some aesthetic differences. The grass is a little more dried out. Color hues are a little different, but functionally everything's the same. And we knew we were going to have 2 or 3 missions on this level. It's not big, so we were going to try to have to be really crafty to plan out how and where the player was going to actually pop into the missions. So you can see there's 2 bases in Valhalla, one in the interior near the waterfall and the cavern side, and one is open up to the water. So basically my first sort of paper design was I took this top-down view and started kind of tracing paths players could take through the levels. And first thing we thought about is how do the players get here. I came up with the idea that the players would be coming in with a Pelican, Valhalla or Ragnarok in this case. I'll probably use those terms interchangeably. Is interesting because it has a crashed Pelican in it, and because of development concerns and resource concerns, we couldn't make any changes to this level compared to the one in multiplayer, which is also was virtually identical to the one in Halo 3 Valhalla. We just couldn't afford the time to this map barely made it into the game. Basically, the fact that we were going to use it in multiplayer and Spartan Ops was how we justified actually the resources to even bring it into the game. But we had this Crash Pelican. I thought it would be cool to kind of tell my version of that story on how that Crash Pelican ended up there. And so the first level, you land on the waterfront. You're brought in by Pelican to reinforce this other squad. So I'm just going to load into the level. We'll talk about it, and we'll sort of go from there. And hopefully I won't ramble too much. I'm going to play for about an hour. That's about all the time I have. So I'm just going to transition into the full screen view here and load into it. Hello, Zhao. I am doing well. Hope you're doing well as well. Well. Let's just say well as many times as we possibly can. So I haven't unlocked any loadout, so I'm just going to load
Crimson,
in.
straight up
See
rescue
here, kind
up
of
here.
flying
You're
into the
aiding Mountain
waterfront.
Squad, a science
All of our
attaché that got
levels
shot
had
down following our
these
mystery
kind of
signal.
intro or outro.
As of last transmission, they're under heavy fire.
And you'll see in the next
We'll land
level,
you as close as we
do
can,
something a
then
little
double
bit
time it to
different
their
there,
position.
which was something I tried to do a lot in my levels to give them all units.
Miller,
But
paint Mountain
you
glass
land
down for
here.
Crimson.
First thing you can see with the objective, you see a little Spartan in the distance. That's just kind of like lead the player along. The idea is to give something in your eye to kind of draw upon, move towards there. I'm going to lower the game audio. It sounded loud in my headphones, so I'm going to adjust it. I think I had it louder for the... There we go. I had it louder for the music in the intro, and I forgot to turn it down. Okay, that should sound better now, so let's hop back into that. Thank you for calling that out. I appreciate it. That was really loud. I'm just going to switch my input real quick, get back into gameplay. But we had a few things that we wanted to accomplish with this first level. The two things that I wanted to deal with was, hey, how did that Crash Pelican get here? What's the story behind that? And the second one was, I always love these 400 towers. They would kind of launch the effect way up into the distance. And so I always thought that was cool, and I thought, hey, wouldn't it be neat if when you first get here, they're not firing, and you're actually responsible for doing something to cause them to fire up into the sky. Another thing we wanted to work with, because we were going to have to come back here multiple times, I didn't want the player to have access to everything. So I worked with the art team to actually create this custom bit of geometry and effects to actually keep the player out of these bases, both of them. And so that was something we wanted to accomplish too. I think the art team did a really good job with this. This is what's known as basically a crate that we placed with physics. If you look real close, you can see that it just sort of, you know, it's not a clean, it's clearly not exact to it, and I had to actually place these by hand, so it was a little bit tricky. The other thing too was we wanted to draw the player into the flow, but because of the way the multiplayer level's laid out, it's pretty open. So we blocked off the bases, and we also added this huge shield here because this was an area we wanted to keep the player out of because of the flow. The other side was, you know, we wanted the player to be kind of drawn, ideally following along that Spartan early. And that's funny. Did the Spartans kill everybody? I think they might have killed everybody. I was spending so much time talking. The Spartans killed all the elites. That's pretty funny. So there's supposed to be a lineup of elites fighting here. Fortunately, there's some reinforcements to move up. But I thought it'd be cool to actually have the players fight alongside AI Spartans, which is pretty neat. I think this is pretty neat. This was my first combat encounter that I set up. It's pretty basic. You have a front of Covenant, front of Spartans. Thought it'd be cool to have the cover of the wrecked Warthog. I dropped this chain gun. The idea is maybe it broke off of the Warthog as well. So I'm gonna grab this, clean up the last few enemies. Got a Fuel Rod Elite, which is probably one of the scarier enemies you can find in Halo 4. I will point out that if you played much Spartan Ops, you probably had to deal with Fuel Rod Elites quite a bit, and I'll be honest, that's actually a bug. There was a bug in Halo 4 that we unfortunately shipped with that caused Elites to, more often than not, upgrade to a version with the Fuel Rod Cannon. And the Fuel Rod Cannon Elites fired their projectiles super fast. The other thing that was set up too here is when the player first lands, they could go along the other side and kill this grunt and take over this turret and use it to actually shoot the enemies from kind of the side and behind to give you an extra line of enemy, extra way of kind of approaching this point. So I wanted to, within the constraints of this multiplayer level, give the player a little bit more freedom as much as I could. I think at one point there was actually more enemies over here as well, which is probably why I have some of these cover pieces that the player could fight. Alternatively, the player could actually just, if this turret got taken out, could pop up here behind cover and kind of pick out and shoot as well. But in basic flows here, you can get some extra Covenant weaponry that can pick up. I'm going to grab both of these projectile ones. You know, there's a lot of teasing in Spartan Ops about that you're a lot of running and hitting buttons, and I definitely own that. We definitely did it a lot and probably too much, but the idea was allowing the player some agency around unlocking certain things versus everything happening automatically. In this case, you know, you get a chance to catch your breath, get some more weapons. Let's see. This was another one of those where, because the height of this crate was too high, I had to sink it into the ground. So if you look closely, you can see some of the decorators actually come out of it. But most players will never notice that. But I wanted the player to actually be able to see the shield come down as you turn it off. I think there's a bug actually in, I don't know if it's just the MCC version of Halo 4. I've noticed that, yeah, on these drop pods, specifically the marker on them seems to go elsewhere in the level. This is another one. Probably if I had to do it over again, I would not have hunters in this encounter. It's probably a little too crazy, but we'll do the best we can. I also tried to make sure the Spartans all had different weapons. The idea being, oof, I got killed. That's not too bad. Well, so this is another thing too, is Spartan Ops like really came together. I'm not going to say the last minute, but the bulk of the design work on Spartan Ops happened from February of 2012 to when we shipped it. So it was definitely something that came together fairly late in development. I think for a long time, the team was just trying to figure out exactly what was the hook. We wanted there to be a PvE mode, obviously, but we wanted it, hopefully, the idea going into it, and I don't know how successful we were, but we wanted to have a little more narrative resonance compared to, you know, Firefight, which was a little more arcadey. In fact, early on, Spartan Ops was intended to be more arcadey, but once kind of conversations came around on, hey, we could actually tell a full story here, maybe actually have a linear series to kind of go along with it. Let's see. Yeah, so this is another issue. So this particular sniper is supposed to, he's command scripted to kind of go up, pop up into this sniper tower, but he doesn't always make it, but eventually he did there. So that was actually kind of nice when I was zoomed in. But getting the nav mesh on these sniper towers was, let's just say it was a pain in the butt. It's another one of those things where, you know, weapons kind of take too long sometimes, so we dropped a couple extra fuel rod cannons. The idea is you can use those to blow up this thing.
Crimson, there you are.
I don't even know what the
Good work pulling
what was the reason behind needing to blow that up. At one point, we were going to build like an extra bit here that was actually going to lower the shields in that tower in the distance. But because this was a co-op experience, I think if we'd had more time, we would have balanced these encounters better, so that they played, honestly, played a lot better than people were playing single player like I am right now. I think this level's a little more fun because you do have AI characters fighting alongside you, so it always feels like you're playing co-op even when you're not, if you can keep the Spartans alive. Let's see how that works for me. I think there's only one left, but that's mostly because I'm chit-chatting. Oh! But I think if we had it to do over again, we would have ideally had a little more time to balance these encounters around 2 players and 3 players and 4 players even. Because I don't think we have too many instances where we did a great job of that. Probably going to die again here. That's okay. I would say one of the other things, kind of learnings coming out of it is because there were no lives, you just respawned repeatedly. You know, the experience often devolved into kind of just a Zerg rush, throw yourself up against the body, die, rinse and repeat. You know, change the way players played a little bit more than we would have preferred. But yeah, I think the best way to play, to answer the question that was in chat earlier, the optimal way to play is really play 4 players, because that's what they were designed around. I'm trying to remember, I think I used to have this encounter set up so that if players move up to this kind of sniper perch, I was going to say, I think it, oh, you bored that. That worked out. That was good luck on my part. Whoop. I tried to dodge that plasma pistol. That's right, there's a wraith that got dropped off earlier. This ghost just came out of nowhere. I'm about to get blown up. I'm going to try to get in close with the wraith. There's another issue where I was going to say they don't always track very well when you're up close to them. But I'd say if you're playing solo, you know, play in a lower difficulty level. Oh, I could have boarded. Yeah, so I think the number one would be balancing the encounters around the number of players playing. Alternatively, and I think alongside it, I think you kind of saw the fact that in Halo 5's campaign you always had a group of Spartans fighting alongside you. I think much like how we had this level set up, it would have been nice if we had just some AI Spartans to follow you, like on this level in the other missions. And it was something we talked about, but we just didn't have the time to implement it. The other one is actually something that I built for the second half of the season, but because of the way the engine was structured back then in Halo 4, if you added a new global script, it would have caused players to have to re-download the whole game. But I think I added it to the global script for the second half of the season, where Spartan Ops was actually having, I think internally the script I called it like Iron Mode, but it was a way of approximating Iron Skull. But I can't remember the specifics on it, but the idea is that there was some logic around that if you were playing with at least 2 players, if everyone died at the same time, basically the mission would end early. You see, the objective in this case was to gain access to this base as well. You also notice that those radar blips of enemies inside were not there until I hit the button. They didn't exist until the player hit that. Oh god, I remember doing this. Man, I was such a little shit. Those zealots with the swords, they only come out, at least this respawn point's pretty good to give players an opportunity to pick up some nice weapons, but holy jeez, that's way too many elites for one player. Yeah. So I think if we didn't change the number of AI, I think we would have changed the composition of the enemies so that if you're playing solo or 2 players, there are fewer elites that you have to deal with. That would have been, you know, a really good idea, but you know, it's one of those things, game development is, it's just a series of thousands and thousands of just best guesses over the period of years, and you don't always know how it's going to play out. I think the other one too is players, we were working under the assumption that most players would play in co-op. But what we actually found after we shipped was that, yep, it's like you're saying it exactly. Most players actually play single player. And I think if we had had the assumptions, if our assumptions had been accurate, it plays out differently. But if we had realized that most players were going to play it single player, we would have designed it differently. In the advent of players not being able to have AI teammates. Oh boy, yeah, I need to clear out these last few enemies. I could pull back and try to grab some fuel rods. It's too bad none of those ghosts are still alive, because those come in handy at this point when I need to clear out these last few enemies. Yeah, I think there's one more Zealot elite. I'm gonna go invisible and see how well that works. Yeah, that's pretty good. I'm just gonna try to move in, kill a lot of this fodder. Set up back here. It's a nice touch. Got some ammo to pull back here. See if that grenade does anything. First thing I'm going to do is try to take out these jackals. But this is a perfect example where in 4 players, these elites are probably cleared out by now. But because I'm just 1 player, you know, they're still around. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, general rule of thumb that I always try to stick to is don't blip the last enemies until they're down to the final 5. But yeah, this is a bad composition of enemies that you have to deal with. That's a lot of elites to deal with. Even took him out. So at least I get the benefit that I get to spawn back in. But yeah, here we have Catherine Halsey being introduced to Spartan Ops. That's pretty cool.
Yes. Have they reached the location of interest?
And the idea, this is where we get into is another thing here, is that the grav lift's not active here. That was another, I tried to break down all the elements of this map and tried to layer them in. And you'll kind of see as we play some of the other missions on this map, how I tried to do that and whether they were fully successful or not. I'll leave it up to players to play. But there's a lot of jabber before I hit this button.
Crimson, get close. Don't touch anything. It's either the
And I wish I was playing it co-op because this is a little bit different. So I really, you know, I have a challenge here when I was designing it. It was all about having this tower fire, but I wanted the player to see it. So how can we keep it so that the player hits the button here, but they get to see it as well? So we have this cool animation that I think that was done by an animator named Sean Mitchell. We got a screen shake, and I give the player objectives on either side to kind of go to. And I think right here, I think this is one of the only spots in Halo 4's development. There we go. Almost missed it. At one point, I think I had it scripted to actually take your control and force your view over there, but I got some feedback from my bosses that didn't necessarily love any instance where the game took control away from you, so they made me take it out. I kind of wish it was still in there. But this is another one of those. I actually played through this mission yesterday. Yeah, you see the nav point's not actually attached to that object correctly. This encounter doesn't need to be here. It could have ended with just that. It could have ended just with the just with the shot coming out of the top of the tower. Also, I don't do a very good job here of giving the player a lot of good weapons to work with to fight back. Like there's the stuff that was here before, and because of some needlers, that's pretty handy. Storm Rifle is actually surprisingly good against elites because it does so well with the shields. But those hunters, like I don't know what I was thinking having these hunters in here. I think I just had, you know, I had a lot of items on the menu. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, we're down to the final 5. Let's see if I kept that count consistent here. But this front doesn't make any sense. Those hunters should be back here, and these jackals should be in front. That's just not a great encounter worked by me, by young David at that point. I'm gonna move back up here to see here. Hopefully not get killed by the back of these. Switch to the Covenant Carbine here. I'm just gonna try to take those jackals out. This is like a nice perch if you just want to take your time against these enemies. I'm also going to try to sprint past them because I still have that chain gun from earlier, which should still be there. We'll see how much ammo I had in that. I can like hear them moving towards me. Hey, there we go. Chain gun didn't get picked up. That's nice. I'm going to try to do as much damage here. Yeah, all of these enemies were just kind of, their areas of attack were all over here. I'm gonna take out this jackal as I slowly move. I love hunters, but on foot, and actually the hunters have, we shipped the hunters with some bugs in Halo 4. You'll see they when they turn around, their animation has some bugs to them as well, and it's definitely one of those things where if you're watching closely, you'll kind of see them. At least I respawn with grenades every time. Bounce them. So the weak points, you can actually shoot the weak points of the hunters from the front if you kind of shoot at their tentacle, those kind of spiky things coming out of their back. But you see when that hunter lifts their shield up in their head, you'll see it twitch every now and again in a way, and that's that's definitely a bug. All right. I'm just going to try to move around behind this hunter. You see, you can throw the grenade behind them. They'll turn around and look at it. You can shoot them. That's a fun little tip. So a couple of things. This was the first Spartan Ops level. This was the first Spartan Ops level. Hello, Kreia. Thanks for the follow. I appreciate that. That was on a multiplayer map. But it was also the first one where back-to-back you'd have the same mission in the same map. So that was actually pretty different, and I wish there was a way, like a playlist you could set up where you could go, I think the optimal way in a perfect world where it would have been nice if you could go straight from one mission into the other one. That would be pretty sweet, because I think they flow, in general, they flow a lot better when you do that. So we're going to move into Shootout Valhalla, which this one was a lot of fun. I think one of the advantages of working on a mode that kind of comes in hot is you sort of often get people okay everything. Let's just get the content in there. And so this one I wanted to have a mantis on Valhalla, and I wanted to have actually a transition where you start on the ground and then eventually you get some vehicles and you start working with fighting enemies in the air, and so that was something I wanted to do. It doesn't make any sense in hindsight that you finish that last mission over by the Pelican, and this one you start back where you were. Also, makes no sense. Where did these automated turrets come from? I don't know. I don't know how they got here. Another one too is when I originally was designing this level, you actually had those Spartans back, but we didn't have the memory overhead. So you have all these goodies that were not there in the last level, but I wanted to give the player some fun toys to go to. But we had to pull the friendly Spartans out, because we just didn't have the memory overhead to support them alongside of everything else, including the Mantis. And this is actually the automated turrets that were taken from Dominion, I think is what it's called. One of the big multiplayer levels we had in Halo 4. But the idea is this was starting with just kind of a reverse, kind of move around the level, fight in some areas you didn't have fights on before. Like in the first mission here, you don't really fight on this hill very much, and this is one of the more iconic areas to fight on in Valhalla or Ragnarok in multiplayer. I'm just going to run around, try to run over a bunch of these grunts. They have a lot of plasma pistols. I'm going to try to dodge those shots as much as I can. Nope, don't hijack me. but it was as much as I could just trying to make better use of the spaces. Also, you'll notice the cover here. There were like communications towers in the last version of the mission, and this one there are these things. I don't know why that's the case. I kept some things consistent, like these sniper towers, but for whatever reason I changed those. I don't know why. I wish I remembered. I'm sure there were good reasons for it, because honestly it would have been easier if I'd kept the same cover there. What if when you press the buttons, it pulls up an automated turret that kills things for you? That's pretty cool. Also, you'll see there used to be a Covenant turret here. Now there's a UNSC turret. I don't know where it went. I don't know where these turrets came from. I don't know who placed them. Also, this particular asset here, you know, we had some issues early on where we had to figure out ways of getting enemies into these areas fast without needing to do a hand-scripted phantom pass every single time. Boy, that grunt really had some legs. But I don't know, these automated turrets, it's cool seeing them actually fight alongside you. So you might not have AI Spartans, but you do have, you know, you do have an opportunity to have some, hey, Rampagey Gopher, thank you for the follow. You have some opportunities to kind of have some AI fight alongside you. They're just turrets. Oh, did you see in the distance there our old shrinking phantom trick that we used to make it look like the ships are flying away faster. But this is kind of nice too, because these turrets are doing a lot of fighting for you. You know, I may be throwing waves of enemies at you, but they're not as difficult. Of course, having a good ghost down these tight corridors where the enemies can't really get away from you is nice. I wonder if I still have this area over here, because the fuel rod cannon should be, yeah, they should still be over here, because you know, it's a new version of the map when you go into a new level. Not a new version, but basically all the weapon placements, if I carry them over, they get replenished, basically. So this is another one of those where I have these kind of neat automated turrets, but the encounters don't always bring the enemies over there. So in this case, I'm going to try to bring them closer, but our AI usually don't pay attention to the automated turrets as much as they could have. So they're mostly just trying to shoot at you. Oh yeah, that's absolutely where we got the shrinking idea stuff from. And there was a lot of variety on how. So I'm going to try to get close to this Wraith as it gets placed. If I can get in behind it, if I remember correctly, you do. Oh jeez, those Wraiths. That's another thing that I think there's a bug there with the Wraith with his physics impulse. Does way too much damage. But the nice thing is that automated turret, the AI kind of ignore them. Oof. Once again, if this was 4-player co-op where everyone can kind of shoot their weapons from a different distance. Also, it'd be nice if I had loadouts set up here. But that was a tough one too, that we did support customized loadouts, but you know, we never knew what loadout players were going to have, so we needed to populate the levels with a variety of weapons, because we didn't want you to end up in a situation that you just didn't have the gear. What? How is the guy in the turret still alive and the rest of the Wraith is blown up? Yeah, so this is actually normal difficulty. Yeah. So this is definitely quite a bit challenging. Oh, that that Jackal was dropped off in the wrong area, so he pathed through the water to get back where his encounter space was. But realistically, these encounters were designed that the player wouldn't get out of the ghost. Like the optimal encounter setup here was we had 2 ghosts, so that 2 players could be on foot, 2 players could be in a vehicle. You're really supposed to just mostly use that. Hopefully kite some of the players, some of the enemies, so they go towards the automated turrets. That placement of the automated turret in the top of the hill was challenging, because if you put it in the middle of the hill, angle-wise, it couldn't get shots on enemies that were very close. Oh goody. I dropped a bunch of hunters on myself again. I will say there's part of me that thinks that was intentional, like dropping a crazy amount of hunters on the player, because This was also one of the first levels where we actually had we didn't have a vignette at the beginning of this mission. Yeah, you see this animation? You see that it's twitching? If you hit it in just the right spot, the hunters have some animation glitches that can kind of lock them up a little bit where they can't do very much. But I wanted to actually do a mid-mission vignette, which we hadn't done before. And I wanted the Mantis to come in. So you do have a little bit of a power spike where this is a bit challenging here, but it's not too bad once you get the ghosts set up here. You can sort of exploit, I'm going to shoot their legs because they have more exposed bits there. And they just turn around on a swivel, which can be pretty annoying. But fortunately their shots, because the ghost hovers, once they hit me right on, they're not going to do too much damage. But you know, unlike the other enemies, so the pre-rendered cinematics, I think they are, but when I say vignettes, I'm actually talking about the in-game bits. That in general, you're usually open a mission and close a mission. But in this case, we wanted one in the middle because I thought that would be really neat, kind of you know, different from what we had done before. There we go. Shot their kneecap out.
It's time to even the odds. Crimson,
Pop up
here's
here,
some
move
new
up here to
toys.
the area.
Enjoy.
And I can't remember where I put it, but there's an Easter egg. You can shoot a radio where you get alternate dialogue from the Rooster Teeth folks, the Red versus Blue. But I thought that'd be neat. I will say some background. When I originally designed having this vignette with the Mantises dropped off, what I actually wanted was to actually have the Mantis to be dropped from space from the UNSC Infinity. I mean, this is neat. I actually hand scripted that bit of smoke that came up. I actually scripted that little camera shake when they get dropped off as well. But I originally wanted them to be dropped from space, like the weapon drop pods and things that you get in the rest of multiplayer. But we didn't. Oh yeah, so enemies pulling in. But I couldn't get enough support to actually do it that way. Ironically, a couple years later, there was a little game showed off and really revealed called Spartan Ops or Titanfall that did the same thing. So when I saw it, I had one of those Leonardo DiCaprio meme moments where I was like, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted the mechs to be dropped from space. But that's okay. I think it still turned out nice. Just maybe not quite as cool as I would like. But this is one of those situations where you have to remember the controls for the Mantis. We throw a crazy amount of enemies at you, but we also give you the tools to deal with them. You know, you have a bunch of banshees that are flying out. And the idea of this encounter was to give the player, I wanted them to always be moving from shooting at enemies on the ground to shooting at enemies in the sky. I hit the wrong button to get out of that Mantis. No, don't do that. But you know, how could you do that, right? You know, could you get the player to kind of keep doing that kind of back and forth action? And the idea was so that you weren't always, you know, if you do any action repeatedly, like automatic weapons for if the player's just holding the R trigger down, they're going to get bored after a while. And so I wanted the player to be kind of drawn back from looking at enemies in the sky to looking at enemies on the ground. The other bit where, you know, if the mode wasn't coming in quite so hot, you probably wouldn't be allowed to do it. But the way it's set up is if one of these Mantises gets blown up, we just respawn them. Because this encounter was definitely designed for using the Mantis. You can get through this without a Mantis, but it's not the way it was intended to be set up. I'm going to hop in here and getting one of these other Mantises, because it's got full health and full shields. A lot of people might not realize that the Mantis actually has shields. I think some people do know this. The Mantises actually, behind the scenes, aren't vehicles. They're a biped. So they have some idiosyncrasies to them compared to other vehicles that you'll deal with. But yeah, there are enemies on the ground here, but I really haven't had to pay attention to them at all. My rockets are reloading. I'm just going to use those on these phantoms. And this was something we did a few times in Spartan Ops, was actually have the players fight phantoms and blow them up. I think there were varying degrees of success. I think it works okay here. I think it works better when there are at least 2 mantises here. So to answer you about that, the mammoth is something we talked about. Also, you know, we did do it in the last half of Season 1, but there was a mission that I worked on early on in the first part of Season 1 that we wanted the Lich to be brought in as well, but it's one of those things, the mammoth is basically a level unto itself, and the Lich is similarly large. I'm trying to remember. I think there's another wave of enemies coming in here. Ah, there we go. Yeah, so it's another one of those where the nav point's just off from where it's supposed to be. I want to say this was the drop pod with... There's one of these that drops 8 hunters off. I think it might be this guy. But the idea was you actually struggle with those hunters early on. And now it's like, it almost doesn't matter. They can't do anything to you. You just walk up to them and stomp. That was pretty cool. Did you see the hunter actually moved over there and actually punched that ghost that was on the way? That was pretty cool. Yep. So current objectives continue defending area. Like players needed to know that. Oh, someone's from behind. Hunter dropping down. Oh yeah, I mean any vehicle, even there are instances in these Spartan Ops levels where we actually switch what we call zone sets, and the zone set's just a collection of items that can be brought into the level. There are instances in Spartan Ops levels and missions where we change zone sets halfway through the mission, and you'll see that there, if you watch closely, there are weapons types that you had access to earlier in the mission that are no longer available to the player. Yeah, as you see early on, it's mostly enemies in the sky. Now I'm bringing in a bunch of enemies in the bottom. This is interesting. I'm gonna let this sword elite hit me. This is something I discovered. It was hard to find an enemy that could actually give you trouble. I discovered that the sword elites, when they hit the mantis, actually caused them to stun lock. I don't think it was intentional. I think it was a bug, but I thought it was pretty interesting to actually provide some enemies that could actually give you a little bit of trouble, because otherwise you're just running around just stomping on enemies. It's a nice power fantasy. It's just fun. Oh, Banshees are back. Oh yeah, so then you've fought a bunch of enemies on the ground, now we're bringing Banshees back. The idea was to slowly bring the encounter towards this tower here. I'm going to move back over here, get myself fresh mantis if I can. We'll see if that was smart or not. But because there are no lives, it wouldn't matter if I did. Get back in here. I don't know what that Banshee pilot was thinking. I know what that guy was thinking.
I need a pelican to extract Crimson. We can leave the mantis behind.
Alright, so all these enemies, I think they should start making their way to the tower at this point. Did I bring in a Wraith? Man, I was a jerk. Yeah, so all these Banshees are patrolling around the tower. These enemies that get brought in, they start retreating to the tower. The idea was to use the encounter to try to bring the player over to this tower, because the last fight was right here. Also, if you see, most players never see it, that Covenant cruiser in the distance. That was another one of those situations that, boy, that came in at the last second, getting that Covenant cruiser. You know, the funny thing is I forgot it. I was like, Wraith had taken some damage. It's because he gets dropped off by these automated turrets. They're still active and fighting some enemies. But everything about the encounter should ideally lead the player into that direction. I just always thought having these ships in the skybox were really cool. And even early on, as I wanted to end with the player actually shooting, or not the player, but actually having this cruiser blown up in the skybox. But I was lucky. That came in at the last second. I had, excuse me, hand scripted a really janky version I did myself, but fortunately I was able to get some assistance from the animation team really, really late in development. Alright, so this is the last bit here. I think you just get brought over here.
Commander, I see it too. Crimson, heavy enemy movement.
Oh yeah,
coming your way.
that's so cool. I forgot I did that. So those vehicles don't spawn anywhere near that Covenant cruiser, but I kind of, player can't really see, and then I sort of scale them up. I just think that looks cool, even if arguably they're way higher than they should be. This player can get. We have this concept of gimbal lock in the game, that if you're causing the player to look too high up vertically, they often get confused as to what direction they're moving or where they're even looking. This encounter, these vehicles are too close to the player, and the player's definitely having this look really too far vertically. I should have kept the encounter a little further out over the water. Fortunately, my spawn here brings me right back. That's weird. I wonder why this vehicle doesn't have the little driver icon. I'm going to see if it does it. Yeah, I think if I blow up one of these mantises, it should respawn. Let's see if that actually happens. Because I had him set up to just respawn. Yep, I had him set up to respawn. Because I never wanted the player to be without a mantis. That's also why the spawn point is back here, so the player would have to go by those mantises again. I will say before we shipped this level, I did. I was forced to play through the entire mission on foot to prove that it was possible. So it is. It's not super fun. Oh no! I think we talked about it, but I don't really like those. I tend not to like those trolley achievements too much, especially in this instance, because this was all very much designed around, around using the mantis. If I'd had more time, I should and would have designed more opportunities for players who did want to flight on foot. Alright, so you can be able to charge up these rockets. They just reloaded. Chambering those. That should take off this. No, it did. Let's try it again. Oh yeah, there's another wave. You see that Banshee coming in. I still think that worked pretty well. Pretty cool. That's a neat optical illusion. So yeah, what I'm doing here. Oh man, Banshee's such a jerk. Dodge out of the way of the rockets, but you wouldn't get them in close. They have nowhere to go. I also, so I think it is this mission. If this is the mission I'm thinking about, I hit a bug really late in development on this mission where to save with perf, we had to remove on the opposite side of these cliff walls, we had to remove all the collision. And so these Banshees can get stuck behind there. In fact, if you played this mission enough times, you may have noticed it. And I wanted to just throw some kill volumes that would just blow anything up that ended up behind those walls, but you know, production was rightly concerned that that could be risky, that if I didn't place it perfectly, players could end up in situations where they get blown up. Every single one of these Banshees, when they get spawned in this mission, have a 5-minute timer, and at the end of that 5 minutes, no matter what, I just blow them up. And it was to, in case any of them got stuck back there, they would eventually get out of the way, and it wouldn't block progression of the mission. That was not my finest hour, because we found that bug really late in development. I think maybe a week or two before we were shipping. So I had to come up with what is the most foolproof method to keep the progression from being blocked. This is another one of those where if you're playing co-op, this goes through much faster, but because I'm playing solo, I think there might be another wave. Yeah, God, there's another wave. If I detected that the player, I don't know that I've ever seen that bug. I'm sure it has happened, but there's also this is one of the missions where if you're destroying enemies fast enough, they occasionally will spawn in and it has really, really tiny enemies. In fact, I think we might be seeing a tiny banshee here. You see those nav points that seem to be invisible. I think those might be tiny banshees that never actually came up to full speed. Well, actually, I think that might be one of the banshees. Man, I don't know what's going on with those nav points. I guess I'm just going to destroy all the enemies that I can see and see what happens. But the tiny, if you may have played other levels before where you end up fighting against really tiny Covenant, that was a bug that does happen pretty rarely, but can happen. That I think we sent back as won't fix multiple times because we just thought it was so damn entertaining. We kept it in there. And it definitely was one of those where we banned this person who's dropping spam in chat. Really need to find a mod. Let me pause this real quick. Apologize, everyone. All right, back to it. So if you're ever playing this mission or one of the other Spartan Ops levels and you end up in a situation where there are these really tiny, fast-moving enemies and they're like really difficult to destroy, that's my fault. But yeah, this didn't need a third wave when you're playing solo. I definitely would have set this up so that you only have a couple of waves, like one or two, ideally. Because it just kind of turns into a drudgery a little bit. Still love to know what's going on with that. I don't know what's going on with that particular nav point. But I do know if it's a Banshee, it's going to blow itself up in 5 minutes. So I won't have to worry about that. No, I think 3 waves. I think there's 3 waves of Banshees and Phantoms. I think I'm going to get bailed out by my own hacky bug fix here. I think I'm going to kill this dropship and then we'll just try watching that large... Okay.
Fire at will, Captain.
Now we see missile blowing it up. Boom! Yeah, the animator did a really good job with this.
Nice work down there, Crimson.
Definitely don't have the audio to support it. That's one of those where
solid intel on Parvul's location. Let's see.
I didn't. It came in really late, but it would have been nice to have more of an audio effect there. But that's my fault for not getting that in the game faster than I did. But yeah, that's Mountain and Shootout of Valhalla. That was a little bit of a slog. I understand the people that complained about that. Let's see. I'm probably not going to play anymore because it's getting close to the time, but trying to look at whatever. So I worked on, I think I worked on this mission 4-1 a little bit. That was the one we were going to have the Lich come in, but and then Rally Point is the last one we do on Valhalla. I think I'll save that one for next time as well. We'll kind of get into some things there that I did to kind of set up to have it. Well, I don't know about the funniest. I don't know about. I mean, honestly, I think the funniest bug is the tiny Covenant enemies. Those are my favorite. Obscure bug, I don't even know. And in fact, a lot of them have probably been fixed by this point. I'm sure some of them got fixed from the MCC team, but yeah, I think that was fun, kind of hopping into those levels. I think we'll go. Let's take a look at the other ones. So I worked on Rally Point. Let's Let's see what else. Let's go back to the episodes. Nope. Campaigns. Halo 4. Spartan Ops. Episode 5. I don't think... I love these. So I will say that the writers had some fun with these mission names. Nothing can go wrong. Everything has gone wrong. I think that's fun. Mission 6. I did work a little bit on some of these. That we actually worked with an outsourcing partner on some of the second half of Spartan Ops, and I think I did a little bit of work on. I think I did a little bit of work on Escape Plan. It's hard to remember. Search and Destroy. I didn't work on that one. There's one later, and this is another one of those. Yeah, exactly. In one end and out the other. But this is another one of those multiplayer maps. I think it was called Apex. I can't really remember. We called the Spartan Ops version Cyclone. Actually, I just recalled that I can't believe they let me call that one mission Shootout at Valhalla. Mission 7, Home Field. This is the one where you go to the Infinity. I definitely worked on one of these missions. I think it was... Yeah, I'm pretty sure Guns of Infinity I worked on this mission, I think. I would know it when I launch into it. I'm pretty sure I worked on this mission, which was a lot of fun. That was one of the neat things of just having... And this is actually something we learned from the first half of the season, was we actually could use the same map multiple times on the same level, but have different sections of them. And players were totally okay with that. And I think that was something we definitely learned. And these missions are a lot of fun. And I'm pretty sure I worked on Guns of Infinity. I'll load into it next time, or before next time, to find out. Expendable. This is when we go in here. Majestic Rescue. No, I don't think I worked on this one either. That's another Apex one. I think one of the designers named TJ that I worked with did that first one. I think Majestic Rescue, I think Tom French did this particular mission. I'm pretty sure it's, 9-1, Search for Halsey. Yeah, I definitely worked on that one as well. That one was a lot of fun. There'll be a lot of cool stories to share with that one. Signs Mountain's a really great one. I think Chris French worked on that one. Hammer's cool. And then I think the last one I worked on, let me go back to the mission episode. The last one I worked on, in one way, out the other. And then the last one I worked on was One Last Time, which was the finale of the series. So that'll be fun to talk about as well. I think the thing I'm thinking of is I'll just maybe stream these at lunch. I'll do it, what day is today? Wednesday. I'll do it tomorrow. I probably won't do it on Friday because it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me. And I'm taking the day off of work. So if you found this interesting, I appreciate it. As always, I do appreciate follows and, whatever else you feel. Spread the word on the channel. I appreciate that. Let me real quick. Appreciate anyone who spreads the word on the channel. I'm also playing through the Splinter Cell franchise as well. I just started Splinter Cell Pandora tomorrow. I do that every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. here on Twitch. And I think these Halo videos, I may actually put those up on... I may put those up on YouTube as well, because I think they're kind of interesting and they're not crazy long, and people might find those interesting as well. So we'll be back tomorrow, I think, at lunchtime to play some more Spartan Ops, and then probably won't be back until next Monday for these particular ones. But I appreciate anyone and everyone who tuned in and streamed. I appreciate the support. And thanks for taking time out of your day to hang out with me and play some Halo. Until next time, I hope everyone stay safe, take care, have fun, and we'll see you next time.